Legal implications of assisted reproductive technology, ART, including embryo disposition and parenthood rights. Assisted reproductive technology, ART, has revolutionized the way individuals and couples with infertility can have children. However, the application of ART raises complex legal issues regarding the disposition of embryos, parenthood rights, and legal recognition of the individuals involved. The intersection of law, ethics, and reproductive rights in ART is multifaceted and varies significantly from one jurisdiction to another. The following sections highlight the primary legal considerations in ART. 1. Embryo disposition and legal rights. Embryo disposition refers to the decision-making process regarding what happens to embryos that are created but not immediately used in vitro fertilization, IVF. Embryos can be stored, donated, discarded, or used for research. These decisions raise important legal and ethical questions. Key legal issues: ownership of embryos. In many legal frameworks, ownership of embryos is not clearly defined, leading to disputes between individuals involved in ART procedures. Often, the fertility clinic that stores the embryos or the individuals, intended parents, are recognized as the owners. Legal questions arise if a couple separates before deciding what to do with the embryos, leading to disputes over whether the embryos should be discarded, used by one partner, or donated to another couple. Embryo disposition in case of divorce. One of the most contentious issues arises when couples who have stored embryos for future use go through a divorce. Disputes can emerge about who has the right to the embryos. Some courts have ruled that the embryos should be destroyed if both parties cannot agree, while others have ruled that the embryos should be transferred to the partner who desires to use them for reproductive purposes. In some cases, the intent of the parties before the embryos were created may factor into the decision. Contracts signed at the time of embryo storage may include stipulations on how embryos will be disposed of if the relationship ends. Embryo donation. Some couples may choose to donate their embryos to other individuals or couples in need. Legal questions arise about whether this donation should require the written consent of both parties, and whether the individuals receiving the embryos are entitled to legal parenthood rights once the child is born. In many jurisdictions, embryo donation for reproductive purposes or stem cell research requires strict informed consent to avoid legal complications. Embryo destruction. The legal status of embryos when discarded, destroyed, is a highly debated topic. Many legal systems treat embryos as potential human life, making their destruction controversial. Some courts, particularly in countries with more conservative views on reproductive rights, consider the destruction of embryos as ethically and legally problematic. Second parenthood rights and legal recognition. One of the most complex legal questions in ART is defining parenthood and establishing the legal recognition of individuals as parents, especially when traditional biological connections are absent. In ART, parenthood may involve genetic, gestational, and intentional components, complicating the establishment of legal parenthood. Key legal issues: biological versus legal parenthood. ART can create situations where the biological mother, biological father, and gestational mother are not the same individuals. For example, In a surrogacy arrangement, the gestational mother carries and gives birth to the child, but may have no genetic link to the child. Legal frameworks in many jurisdictions grant legal parenthood to the intended parents, regardless of biological connection. However, legal parenthood issues may arise if the intended parents and the biological mother have different plans for custody, or if one or more parties want to relinquish parental rights. Surrogacy and parentage. Surrogacy can take two forms: traditional surrogacy, where the surrogate uses her own egg, and gestational surrogacy, where the surrogate carries an embryo created using the egg and sperm of the intended parents or donors. Legal parenthood in surrogacy arrangements varies widely. In gestational surrogacy, the intended parents are often granted parenthood, but legal agreements may need to be established in advance to clarify rights. Traditional surrogacy is more complex because the surrogate is the biological mother of the child. Some jurisdictions require pre-birth orders, legal documents signed before birth, to establish that the intended parents are the legal parents from the moment of birth, while others may require post-birth adoption processes. Parental rights of same-sex couples. ART has expanded family building options for same-sex couples. Legal recognition of parenthood for same-sex parents varies widely by country and state. In some cases, both partners may need to go through adoption procedures to gain legal recognition of parenthood over a child born via ART. In others, joint parental recognition is granted automatically to both partners if both are legally involved in the process. Donor conception and legal parenthood. When sperm or egg donors are involved in ART, the legal rights and responsibilities of the donors need to be carefully defined. In many jurisdictions, sperm or egg donors are not considered parents, and they do not have legal rights to the child born as a result of their donation. However, this is not universal, and some legal systems may grant rights to donors in certain circumstances. Donor contracts that clearly outline the rights of the donor, the recipient parents, and the child are critical in preventing future legal conflicts. Third, legal frameworks and contracts in ART. Given the complexity of ART, legal contracts and frameworks are essential for preventing disputes and defining responsibilities. Key aspects of these legal frameworks include informed consent. Legal agreements and consent forms must be signed by all parties involved in ART procedures. These documents typically address important legal questions such as ownership of embryos, parental rights, the use of donated gametes, and the disposition of embryos in the case of separation or divorce. Embryo storage agreements. ART clinics often require patients to sign embryo storage agreements that outline what happens to the embryos if the patients choose to discontinue treatment, undergo a separation, or if the clinic closes or experiences a financial issue. International variability. ART regulations vary significantly between countries. Some nations have comprehensive laws protecting the rights of ART participants, while others have limited or no regulations, creating challenges for cross-border ART treatments. For example, genetic parenthood laws may be different in jurisdictions that recognize genetic links to parenthood versus those where gestational or social parenthood is prioritized. Fourth, key legal and ethical questions in RT. Who should have parental rights in a surrogacy arrangement? The intended parents or the surrogate? How do legal systems deal with the issue of embryo storage, especially in cases of divorce or death of one party? Should sperm or egg donors have any legal responsibility or rights over a child born from their donation? How should ART regulations protect children born from ART procedures, ensuring that they are entitled to inheritance, identity, and legal protection? 5. Conclusion. ART has brought about a series of legal complexities regarding the disposition of embryos and the recognition of parenthood. As ART continues to evolve, the law must adapt to these new reproductive technologies. Legal clarity regarding parental rights, embryo ownership, and disposition is crucial for protecting the rights of all parties involved, particularly children born through ART. In many cases, legal agreements and informed consent forms are essential for defining rights and avoiding disputes, but global consensus on ART legal frameworks remains varied. Therefore, individuals and couples must ensure they have proper legal guidance when pursuing RT treatments to navigate these complexities.